wanted to start because I'm sure there'll be some overlap. I wanted to like maybe kind of throw out some of the obvious things so you don't have to all say, yeah, me too. And then maybe we'll look for some outliers. And then correct me too if I've maybe missed any critical phases. So I was thinking, well, imagine you guys have job posts. Maybe in some cases we'll assume there aren't job posts yet, but you know that you're starting to look. In some cases, there are companies where you might not necessarily have a job post listed, but you know that you have some leeway that if a rock star showed up, you would maybe start a conversation. So we'll put that on the table. Let's say some of those rock stars have a pretty good time at getting through the passes. So we won't go through those details, but just kind of lay the grounds. So for other people who are looking to break in, okay, we're going to assume there's job posts, there's an application process, there are recruiters, maybe you get referred through coworkers or friends. Are there any other maybe ways that people might not have thought of that capture your interest, that you might think that they would be a candidate? Maybe I'll start with you, Grace, or we can do a raise hand thing too, because that might be easier if you're like.
Happy to. MongoDB is hiring across the board in many different areas, and particularly as well in DevRel and education, which is the function that I lead up. So we're hiring traditional developer advocates, those folks that go out to speak, write a lot of articles, particularly in the mobile space, because we have Realm and Realm Sync to Atlas. So we definitely want some folks who have that mobile expertise. So that is one area we're looking for right now. The other is, you said rockstar, and immediately what came to mind is, wait a minute, we've got quite heroes and heroines who are writers. We've got a lot of hiring going on in our technical writing group too. And they may not think of themselves as rock stars, but certainly they are the quiet heroes that keep pushing along the documentation we all depend on, right? So that's really important. And then we also have what's called curriculum engineering. So we have this university platform, which does a deep dive in learning on MongoDB and Atlas. And we need more engineers who are interested in teaching and doing videos around that on our university platform. So let us know. We've got all this open up on our MongoDB careers site. You can ping me on GraceFR on Twitter, or you can send me an email. I'm just grace@mongodb.com.
All right, I love how you're
that
pushing
easy.
it. Jeff, I saw you nodding. Any?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, first of all, what I always ask people, I tend to hire quite a bit, and I will just say in ballpark, I probably have I work at Microsoft leading a pretty good sized team in DevRel, but I probably have about 80 positions across my team, give or take, over that we're hiring for. And there's lots of opportunity for folks. I would just say broadly, for people, when I have this conversation for hiring, I ask people what their dream job is. And I actually start with that. And I'll usually just start with folks. I'll say, hey, take a moment and think about when you're at the pinnacle of your career. I learned this from Jana Messerschmidt at Twitter. She was a great leader that I worked under. And she said, if you think about that moment at the pinnacle of your career, right? And that's that moment, like when you want to retire and you look back, wow, it never got better than that. And I'll often ask people, like, tell me what that job might look at Microsoft. Tell me that what it might look like at another company. And actually tell me a third one that's just for fun. And I actually usually will say, hey, and let's go do that in a day or so. Let me tell you about some of the things that are going on here and come back to me. Because what you want to do in some of these things in your career is, careers are either like ladders or jungle gyms. And what I'm trying to do is find out what's the experience to bridge there. Maybe I've got their dream job, right? And what I'm trying to do is then I can find out and learn about what people are doing. We hire in our team, and I'll just close with, I have openings for engineers, service engineers, people that are building skilling platforms and cloud services. And these are engineering roles within, Azure engineering all up, right? And those roles are as important to us because they support docs and skilling and learning. And those are important, as I say, our serverless or our Kubernetes stack, right? That matters. Docs, those roles to that. We have roles for writers, the ultimate source of empathy, James Governor, right? Docs, accessibility, localization, right? We hire for that. All of these roles are developer relations to me. Skilling, training, development, we all pieces together. We focus a lot on advocacy, which is like, profession that I grew up in and we all work on. And that's great. And we can talk about some of the roles for that. But what I'll tell people is a role in developer relations can be so broad-based. And it can go from dev to PM to you name it. But think about what you want to go do, how you want to help. And then we can have a conversation with those other roles. And just the last bit is, maybe think about things as a jungle gym right now in your career, right? So often we focus as like these ladders, and all I'll leave you with is like, how do you build up some bridge of experience? Maybe you want to jump over and be a PM for a bit, right? I've done that for own ship product and I love it. Maybe you want to do some other roles in engineering and build those skills to kind of jump yet. I'll stop there, but we have lots of openings. Follow me, DM me, you name it, at Twitter. But today I want to help the professional up. So thank you.
Okay, great. Uttam, have there been any maybe unusual places, unusual in the sense that where you've found potential candidates that maybe some people may not be thinking about when they're looking for a DevRel job?
Sure, yeah, and I think a lot of us take very different career paths and trajectories. I remember the talk I did at DevRel Con in London, where I shared my own journey of how I ended up being in DevRel, and I actually had no clue of DevRel before I ended at Google and the work that we're doing. Before I answer your question, really quick, like within Google, continuing to hire across multiple DevRel roles as well. From Android to cloud, DA roles, tech writers, developer program engineers. And also there's a unique role that I represent, which is part of my team, which is the program managers. And these are the folks in different regions and markets and really focusing on the ecosystem in those regions, from developers to startups to partners. Now coming to your question, the best advice I give for anyone who's looking for a role is actually to go through a referral. If you find someone in that organization and in that company, and if you can go through them, your chances of actually having the application reviewed and getting a response is significantly higher than if you apply through a direct channel. And this is where I think there's a tremendous support across this panel, depending on which company you end up selecting. I think folks will be very, very happy to guide you in the direction. One of the channels I have been quite successful personally in hiring is actually from the top contributors in the community. When you're looking for DA roles, for tech writer roles, for program managers, for community managers, and I remember Jeff's social media post leading up to this panel, like, are you passionate about helping developers? That's actually a clear signal where you are able to assess someone and how passionate they are beyond the 1 day, 2 day interview that you would do. And that gives me tremendous confidence. That's a little bit long drawn, but that's a channel where I have had a lot of success hiring strong candidates.
Excellent. Adam, if you don't have anything, it's fine. I don't want to pressurize people to feel like they have to add to a list.
Everybody stole my thunder already. Fantastic. I want to echo the things that Grace, Uttam, and Jeff have already mentioned. Like, first of all, I do think the community of users is one of the best places to go find people for DevRel. They've already feel acutely the pain that the developers are experiencing with your tools or platform. And so they've got a great sort of sense to bring into the organization and use that to solve problems for the larger audience. I do also agree, like, yes, lots of people, DevRel, like Uttam said, he didn't know DevRel existed. Lots of people that are in adjacent spaces don't think of themselves as building a career in DevRel. And it's kind of okay to say to them, this is a path, this is a journey you're on. How can I help you get to the place you want to get to? And it's okay to take a tour through DevRel to go somewhere else as well. Like, there's plenty of people that I've worked with that have wound up in, CTO style for responsibilities, or in program management responsibilities or engineering responsibilities after having spent time in DevRel. And there are people that have built careers in DevRel as well that I've worked with. So you can, as long as you're helping people get to the place they want to go to, you're going to have a better chance of having a reasonable conversation with them. And then, there's lots of different parts of DevRel. It's not all just the glitzy, shiny DAs. There's a lot of people behind the scenes that got to do a lot of hard work and making documentation really real for people. So, everything that the rest of the panel said already, I'm in total agreement with. Hashicorp's hiring still, so lots of interesting stuff there. So that's my pitch. Everybody's got a pitch.
Yeah.
So,
I hope we got the pitches through.
Can I just add one tactical thing? If you're watching on this call and you're looking for a job, and we're out here talking, hey, long-term this, you're probably going, come on, for gosh sakes, I've given 800 resumes. Oh my gosh, how do I actually get in there and reach out to it? And first thing I'm just going to say is, like, it's about hustling out there, right? And persistence. And I'll be really honest, you've probably DM'd me and I probably haven't responded certain times, or maybe I did. And that's nothing personal. Like it's like you reach out and try, and it's often like at different times, or maybe other things going on behind. The thing that I'll tell you is persistence. And it's not about the most shiniest person that's out there. We use, and I've hired people that may have been called rock stars, but some of my best, most effective advocates are the people that we build and the people that we develop and great. And that to me is the best part of my job. Like I've been on stage, I've been 20,000, 10,000, who cares, right? I don't have to do that anymore. My job right now is the next generation. And I almost even, some things of our advocates, look at that. It's just so much more fun. It's almost like building the next cast of a Saturday Night Live. And man, the people in the next generation of advocates out there are amazing. Just keep reaching out to us, and don't feel that you got to be some rock star that stands up a certain way. We're looking for people that are lifelong learners, people that can synthesize, and then finally people that have a connection to a community. And so if you're out there and you're active and you care for a community, and that's not just speaking, like the community folks out there, this is a thing that of a way of people are that I respect so much. The community people are the people that stay till 3, 4 in the morning till the last one is taken care of, whether it's in a Slack room or in person. And we look for that. And you look for people that want to help. And so just the only thing I'll say is like, hey, how do I get in there? You could put a resume in. But as Uttam said, like it's going to be very difficult for that to stand out just through the amount of resumes and the way the system works. Work your network, work someone who knows someone, and just keep at it. And if you're looking for a job at Microsoft, I'll just put this here right now. Are you looking for all? Jeff Sand at Microsoft. Fastest way. Send me a note. That's all you need to know. That's my direct email, and I'll get you to someone to talk. So thank you. Just keep hustling out there.
So
I just want to add a quick thing there to Jeff. I worked under Jeff for a while in Microsoft. I did a tour of duty through Microsoft for 8 years, and I worked in a couple of different roles. I was a DA, what we called them evangelists back then, Jeff, if you remember way back when. And then I was a program manager. So there are many different roles. So I want to thank Jeff for the opportunity because I grew up through that system. That's where I learned a lot of the basics and foundational elements of evangelism. So I just want to shout out for Jeff. So thank you for that. And also Adam Sullivan, who may or may not be listening in on this, was also one of my leaders who went on to Salesforce as a great leader in evangelism. Just want to shout out for him. And there are just so many different touch roles. And one of the best people I ever hired was someone who went in through this pilot program that I created for champions at Atlassian. And he was one of my best champions. And at some point he said, hey, I'm kind of interested. I mean, I love Atlassian. Can I apply? And he worked for me there, and he's working for me now. So shout out to Peter. You've been great. And so I love having champions in the community as part of DevRel.
That's great. So to kind of summarize and then open up, it feels, okay, obviously, work your network, connect with as many people as possible. But networking, maybe you're not that social when you go to a conference and all that. Some of us are like hugging a lot of people, well, not anymore. But there are many ways to be social through different platforms, right? Like, maybe you're just really passionate about docs and you're helping clean them up. And we had actually one of our Uncomp speakers earlier talking about how like he just got really excited about a problem that he saw. And through solving that problem, he was also able to kind of beef up his skills with a particular language. And then he decided, oh, well, it appears maybe there's missing tutorials. And so we saw kind of a gap. And so your way of helping, and then, and actually one of the things he shared was he just put a note like, hey, if this helps, reach out to me. Or if you want to chat about it, reach out to me, right? So it doesn't mean that he was out there like, talking with people and getting business cards or what have you, but there are other ways to be very social and connected. So maybe we can dig into that a little bit more, because my next question was like, what are the kind of platforms and areas that you look for? And of course, many roles are very different, but blog posts, YouTube videos, GitHub page, the code, sample apps, engagement with open source, docs, kind of owning meetup groups. Obviously, again, it's very different per the job title, but what, like for me, I'll tell people, if you're looking for a dev advocacy role, in my case, you will be speaking, I will be looking for a video sample. And if they're like, well, I've never done it before, I'm like, you can talk to your phone. You can have your friend hold up your phone. You can go to a local meetup and do a 5-minute talk. Now, DevRel Con, we just did an unconf and we recorded everything. And, hopefully we'll do more of these in the future. That's been a perspective for me, but like, what have been your essential go-to places? And if someone's like, how do I get started? Like, this is what's going to stand out, when you share your resume or your links.
Yeah, so
Adam?
There's a couple of things I think about here. I'm in agreement with you on the advocacy. I'm looking for some kind of evidence of where you've been speaking. If you haven't got a public profile, if you haven't got a video of you from a session you've delivered, we always include, even when I was at AWS, we always included during the interview loop a presentation portion where you had to pretend you were talking to a meetup when we were evaluating your presentation skills. So that's an essential part. It's one of those things you kind of have to practice. It's a skill you can acquire very quickly, and there's lots of really great ways to get better at it. But you have to have practiced it in order to feel like that's a reasonable part of your responsibility. And so, look for opportunities to go do that. Look for opportunities to engage. I can guarantee you 90% of your meetup leaders are dying for speakers, right? They're always, when you run a meetup program, the leaders of your meetup groups are always asking, when can you help me with a speaker? What can you do for get me a speaker? They're dying for people to speak. So you should have lots of opportunities to deliver some content there. I'd also say if you're on the docs and the content side, honestly, contributing to the open source documentation is a great place that we've found. Like pretty much all of us, I think, have had docs open sourced in some kind of way or open for contribution in some kind of way. The people that go in there and actually correct problems and identify issues and point out things, those are incredibly useful. That's a great place to go find people that are super engaged with the technical material. You can make a very direct assessment of their ability to write. That's really good. And then when I was at AWS, we hired the top answerer on Stack Overflow for AWS questions. So he was great. He was all over it. Turned out it was just, is the fact that he could go get paid to do that as a full-time job, he didn't even think existed. And so we just went ahead and got him and brought him into the DevRel team. So there's lots of different places where you can go make a reputation for yourself, whether it's through the docs channels, through the community forums, or whether it's through your local meetup organizers. Use those places to showcase what you can do, and that gives you your advertisement as a potential to be hired by a company that's got a DevRel program.
Adam, it's really, really sharp. Like the first thing that I tend to go look at someone, and I think a lot of people will go and you'll get intimidated. They'll say, wait, I don't have any video views or on my videos, or I only 23 people. And I'm like, great, you held a 23-person conference and had people over. What I go and look at in that stuff is like, hey, when somebody tells me, hey, I've done this, or I'm blogging, or I've done a lot of content, the first thing I go look at is the blog, right? And then I go look at the dates. And what will frustrate me if they do it is if the most recent blog post was like the day before the interview and they haven't kept it up, right? Like I'd say, the thing on this is when you do share and you want to share, like think about the context with it and do. But I go through and I go, oh, they blogged. Oh, wow, what a great post. Let me go back a year ago. Hey, is this something new? And then how did they care about it, right? For us, it's about a craft, right? And so I'm looking for someone who's the quality that they're gonna put into it, and are they gonna finish it? And how did they convey something to an audience? I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not gonna look for commas, but like if they wanted me to share something, was that a little bit of a stage or a stunt? Or is this something that they truly believe in operating in? You look at video and so forth, and what I will say is I look at a bunch of stuff, and I think we have to be careful as an industry sometimes about how much we think about video with how much we're shifting it. It's absolutely like we'll go through and we'll ask people, hey, have you done a talk? And we can teach great speakers to be better speakers, and we can help grow people that way. But I think it's people who use, in our world, we think about who uses the internet as a palette to communicate. And you want to have I look for like some of our best advocates today are hackers. And of course, they're engineers in our world, like they are in an engineering pipe, but they can hack media, right? They can sit there and go, wait, I'm gonna use Twitter here, and then I'm gonna use some random service that nobody ever did with a bit of duct tape to go tell a story and get somebody started. And they have that creativity. That's what I'm looking for. And I can build that in anyone, right? I can find somebody who cares about design, and I can see a level of quality. Ashley McNamara, right? Ashley's an amazing advocate in so many ways. And it often happens through art, right? Because that creativity happens through what she creates, and she's able to connect and communicate with an audience. And if I describe that another way in a context, people would be like, wait, is she an advocate or is she a designer? No, she's an amazing developer advocate. And so you're looking for people that can craft that. Really neat time and shift in our industry. And there's never been a greater time for our profession. Like the writing roles, the training roles, the world needs us. The world needs us. And I'd say, come work for me, but also like, come get a role for any of these other people, because we got to help. We have a job to do as DevRel.
That's great. Uttam, do you have any thoughts? Like, do you look at GitHub? Do you look at for particular roles?
Yeah, so plus one to the things that Adam and Jeff just said. One thing I want to, this was a sentiment that came out from a previous question. I just want to dispel that. Like, yes, we want people to go out and network, but just the networking itself is not the end, right? Like the thing that folks are mostly looking for is intent and how your passion in helping developers and contributing. So when you're networking with folks on this panel or others, it should be with that context and not just the networking for the sake of networking. Now coming back to the question, looking at videos for a DA role, and in some cases also having folks to do a presentation as part of our interview should be expected. Like maybe one of the rounds is where you are asked to do a presentation, 20-25 minutes. Similarly, if you are interviewing for developer program engineer role, expecting more programming based questions is reasonable. GitHub contributions actually matter quite a bit. Folks do look at that as a signal, because sometimes interviewers are trying to pick signals which are beyond those few hours that they'll be spending with you as an interviewer. And that's where going back and looking at your blog posts that you have done, the GitHub contribution, the YouTube videos that you might have published, those gives interviewers a lot of confidence. There is another set of role that I hire quite a bit in my team, and these are like looking at overall developer relation strategy, because there are multiple platform options right now for developers, and like what's the trend, what are the insights happening. So sometimes I will probe folks on questions like, can you describe the landscape of developers in your country? So a question like, okay, what's the population? What are the popular platform choices, etc. And that gives you a sense, is like, is this person focused pretty much on the tactical stuff, but they're also building strategic insight on how the platforms are evolving and they're shaping. So that's an additional skill I would try to test in some of the roles that I had in my team.
I think that's a great point. So to summarize a little bit, we often hire for someone who's gotten validation within a community, and that might be a geographical community, it might be a language community, it might be some kind of user type of community, and that's the value that they bring, right? They not only are a member and they're active, but they also have knowledge and they can articulate this is how this community speaks, and this is what gets them excited, and this is what's going to matter. So just wanted to emphasize that. So kind of also with these platforms, I mentioned GitHub, blog posts and all that. Jeff, you mentioned a little bit like, hey, you maybe only 23 people viewed your video, but great. But how much do these numbers matter? Do you look at number of Twitter followers, GitHub stars on their projects? I'm sure people wonder that, like, how much does it matter? How much?
Yeah, I mean, I always watch vanity metrics, right? I think in our jobs and things, we talk about metrics, and I've actually kind of quit talking about metrics in some ways for my team. We talk about OKRs that we set all up for our team. And what I move more into is you look at the craft. And I'll tell you, look, if I see someone who has an amazing following on Twitter or a connection to community and they're doing massive reach, like we probably have already talked, and if we're not, like, call me and I'll give you my home number. But it's not really about that, right? It's about a connection to a community, right? And I will tell you, because of our platforms and scale, if we create forums for people, we're going to be able to create the next, of an advocate that has reach. I look at the mode that we're in right now, and one thing I think about is, what's happening in the Twitch space, the streaming space, the virtual event space. I think that there's going to be a massive sprawl in some port of virtual events. And so on this area here where you're saying, hey, how do the superstars stand out and does that stuff matter? I definitely am looking for people that we can go develop that are going to be able to stand out and resonate with an audience and make an emotional connection, create content that entertains and informs. And that's a rare skill and craft. And so the things that stand out on that are your ability to connect and develop and care for an audience, follow through, the ability to do different modalities. And I think some of the streamers and the things that we saw in the gaming industry, right? You look at the Nitros of the world, right? Who's going to be the first advocate to hit 100,000 viewers, right? Who's going to be the first one to hit a million people following them on streaming, right? Some of these people are around 10,000 and so forth. If you look back at our build conference, right? Our engineers who participate in that, they changed their sessions and delivery to be more streaming-like. The exit row for your conference right now is 300 pixels away. It's the exit door is like 300 pixels away. They click X and leave. And so if your ability to retain an audience and not talk long like I am and get people moving on, are things that we're going to go do, and you will stand out and you will have a career. But I'd say focus on the content and the craft, focus on the audience, and all great things will happen with your content, and you will end up having a great role. It's rare skills.
I want to follow up on what Jeff's saying about the shift to sort of like streaming as an engagement platform. I think there's something here that is often overlooked, is that it isn't necessarily about video. It's about interaction. And if you're treating your streaming platform the way you treat your webinar platform, then you're doing it wrong, right? Because your webinar platform, you can just pipe any recorded content you want into it, and everybody's going to go consume it in a silent room somewhere, and maybe there's a little bit of chat interaction. If you can make your streaming content much more engaging, a mechanism for taking customer or engagement feedback from the participants directly into what you're doing, then that can be a lot more fun. When I was at AWS, we kicked off streaming on Twitch. I mean, was it 4 years ago now? Was our first Twitch stream at AWS. And one of the funnest things we did, there's a guy, Randall Hunt, who worked for me, and he did Twitch Plays the AWS console. And what he did is he took the stream of chat from the Twitch session and you allowed it to move the cursor and click buttons inside his AWS console. And so we had people in chat directing what was happening to the cursor and starting servers and opening databases and doing all kinds of stuff. That kind of interaction, that kind of engagement is something you can't replicate in an in-person event. It's something you can't replicate in a webinar. There's a room there for innovation and the way that people think about doing things with these streaming platforms we haven't even scratched the surface of yet. And you see it on the gaming side. These guys that are doing gaming streamers, they got like custom emojis and they've got like poll mechanisms to say what they're going to go do next. We've got to, when we think about streaming as a platform, there's so much room for innovation when it comes to DevRel there that people that can go now that, they'll have loads and loads of opportunities.
All I want to say is, please, for the love of God, people, don't recreate everything that sucks about events when we go virtual. I literally think I had somebody talking to me about how to have like a bag to collect swag and walk around a virtual event. And I was like, please don't recreate everything that's bad. Like, let's not have execs up for 7 hours bloviating about like behind a podium, 4-minute tights. And let's move the stuff out of the session, the learning and the skilling and the hands-on stuff out of it. But like, it is the greatest opportunity for industry. And it sucks that so many people are hurting around the world, but we have a job here to go do. So thank you. Adam is so spot on.
Definitely. That reminds me of a company that was using Second Life, and I asked the person, they had artists making their avatar, and I said, oh, what cool thing did the artist make you? Oh, they put me as a person behind a desk. And I was like, you're in Second Life and they made you a person behind a desk.
I gave talks at Second Life a long time. Grace probably even helped me with them, and all that ever happened is people came flying around and flew into me and smashed into me on stage because it was this new thing. It was really, really disruptive and a long time ago. But wherever the modality is, where developers are, we got to be there.
So it's Animal Crossing.
Yeah. I just want to echo some of the comments that Jeff and Adam made here. And, you know, we talk about developer relations, and I tell this story a lot right now, which is a long time ago when I was still at Microsoft, actually, I was working on open source initiatives. And I had spoken at one of these open source conferences, was walking around after my talk, and one of these developers walked up to me and said, so, are you relating it? And I looked at him like, oh, he's talking about the relations part of my title. Yes. And yet right now, that is the most difficult thing to do in this virtual landscape we're all operating in. So to Adam's point, I think there is an opportunity for us to level that up and innovate around how we engage, to both your points, but also just relate, right? That empathy that everyone really needs deeply right now, and connecting and finding a way to like really connect, because in this format, like we're missing half the communication. Body language is a big part of communication, right? And the other is eye-to-eye contact. One of the things that is so wearing for a lot of us and these hour-by-hour Zoom calls is that we're not making that eye-to-eye connection. So it feels like you're not relating, and it's really hard work now to relate. So I think there's definitely a ton of opportunity there for us to figure that out. One of my dev advocates actually participated in a virtualized conference that was put in Animal Crossings, which is a really popular gaming platform. And I thought, now and gaming is a perfect platform for us to experiment on, because those guys in Roblox was with the company I was in last. They understand how to scale things up, right? And they've always been data oriented. They eat up data every single day to make sure all the servers are up and that all the players are engaged. So that's where we really should be looking to make sure that we're engaging and relating with developers. So just a shout out for that.
Yeah, the Desert Island DevOps was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. We had somebody from the Hashicorp team was involved in that as well. And that's the kind of opportunity there is right now to go do something a little different.
Yes. And a plug to Austin, who spoke about that in the early days of, I think on the first week of DevRelCon Earth. So that's a perfect segue. So I was looking for, so when you're looking at these materials, and then I'm going to assume during the interview phase or maybe the early conversation phase, what kind of like personal qualities what kind of qualities are you looking for outside of, let's say, presentation skills, and maybe they have a lot of output, but like, how do you see empathy through their work or through the interview process, or a sense of humor, creativity? I've often talked about how you can create a sample app that's a hotel booking app, but you can say it's a hotel booking app for unicorns. And then, then suddenly you just added something to it, but it just makes it kind of funny. And those types of things are small things, but they add value. So maybe Uttam, you've been a little quiet. Are there things that you notice, like as Grace was just talking about, how people make eye contact, or maybe they have very empathetic tone when they help people in Slack or in their docs? What are things that you're looking for that you think this is a potential candidate?
Yeah, so that's actually a great point. Like you can look at the core skill set the person brings, but for me, my experience, the ones who are most successful are the ones who are able to have that strong level of empathy with the developers. This is a tough role, like developer relations, and there is a lot of strain that comes because we're kind of sitting in the middle. We are working and then sharing a lot of resources to developers, but at the same time also working with the product teams. And it's our job to make sure that we are the advocates on both the sides. That's the reason Google, we started using the term developer advocates from right at the beginning. This in a way represents what the role is. When you go out, you need to advocate on behalf of course, the platform that you're representing, but when you come back in the organization, then you are advocating on behalf of the developers. So strong element of empathy, that if it's visible through the work that you are doing, if you are a community manager, how is your community doing? If I would go and talk to one of your community members, how are they speaking about that, about you? That's a strong signal. Your contribution to docs in some of those areas, and how is that? That's a strong signal as well. And the other elements I would test, and it's again, it's important in some of the roles that we put folks in, where you are working with cross teams, multiple product teams, is how would you share a difficult feedback? So the question is, a team is launching an API. The API is not ready, and your developers are telling you it's not ready. How would you handle that situation? And the thing that I'm trying to test in each of those cases, are you putting the developer first? Are you putting the community first? Is it coming up in the actions that you have done in the past? Is it coming up as a theme in the interview? Because if that's not happening, it takes a lot of time to build trust with your developer community, but few wrong actions, you can lose that trust. And that's an element I look very, very strongly when we are hiring anyone on the team. Like we need to put the trust with the developer community, and so that's respected. So like, in addition to all the core skill sets, great speaker, top contributor, all of the other stuff, but are you putting the developer's interest first?
You know, you said something that I thought was so good, and I know it. First of all, I'll just say, you know, Google did, you know, as Vic and Dotra back in the time, and different people went and said, hey, we're going to go with advocacy as a name. When we rebooted our work, we picked that up too, and I think it was a very important moment for us in the industry and profession, because I think that some of that consistency and what the roles need to be is really important. I think we can all do some good for a profession and people as we work to develop that. Saying that, you met one developer advocate. Congratulations, you've met a developer advocate, because they're as unique as the individuals in the world and as many developers. In our company, and we really do think of it as an engineering role, and you have to be able to live in an engineering environment. And we can grow and help you that, but it's Scrum, Sprint, you name it, part of engineering milestones, contributing to a release and working that way. And product feedback, the ability to synthesize product feedback. If I can have someone that can actually truly help me understand for the Node community, like why we're broken and why we need to be better, you know, we did that there, and being able to operate in the environment, pure gold, right? To do the things and connect with the customer creatively, and then you can synthesize that and bring it back to the engineers. Feedback from advocates is completely different than anything you'll get from an enterprise customer. I promise you. You know why? It's about 5 minutes to wow to start, right? How do you get somebody to start? There's no point whatsoever of doing anything on stage unless a customer can start doing it. And if you can do that type of work, and you don't have to be a writer as a profession, but you can be great at it and you can help. And if you can do that, if you can be the helper and bridge these things as an advocate, your career is set for life. Because no matter whatever the environment is, you're going to have valuable skills for an engineering team and a product company. Engineering part of this has changed a lot in our world. And our advocates sit down with the most senior people in our company and distinguished engineers in technical roles. And that's sought after and valued incredibly so in our company. Really important, the engineering part of it.
That's a great segue. Oh, yes.
Well, I just want to talk for a second about interview process.
That's my question.
So
can we just assume there's an initial, there's a technical, and there's a presentation for a lot of dev advocates, or is there another aspect that you guys add to your?
Let me talk a little bit more generally first, right?
Okay.
There are different ways to run interview processes, and a lot of them are dependent upon the company you're interviewing with.
Yeah,
and so pretty much the last decade, I've been working for companies that have taken a behavioral-based approach to interviewing. And that's the way that we did things at AWS. It's the way we do things at Hashicorp. And I find it a very, very effective means for finding out about these things that we're talking about, whether it's empathy or customer awareness or how you operate in engaging with other teams, how you share deliverables. Those sorts of things are the things that are trying to be uncovered using behavioral-based interviewing. So if you're looking at companies like Hashicorp, where we publish our leadership principles very, very clearly, or AWS, where you publish your leadership principles, what the interview process is there, the job of that interview process is to have you find places in your work experience that you can express as examples of those principles. So for HashiCorp, whether it is pragmatism or integrity or execution or vision or beauty works better, those principles are things that you should feel like, do I have a representative example from my work history that matches up with one of those principles? If you don't, then you may not be a good match for the company. but you may be excellent at what you do. You might be a better match for a different company. But for the companies that do think about their principles as a guiding responsibility for having a good match for their employees and how they do hiring, then that's the way to sort of approach those problems. I've found behavior-based interviewing incredibly valuable. It's helped me level set across different roles and different responsibilities. It's helped me become repeatable and more accurate. And it's one of the things I think is super important. And so it's like it's a style or technique you need to recognize. If you're interviewing with that company, that's the way I'm going to need to prepare for it. If you're going to interview for another company, maybe you need to practice hypotheticals or coding examples or go through algorithmic tests or whatever it is. But like for other companies, they got different responsibilities, different ways they evaluate candidates. For me, in my experience, by the time you've gone to the in-person part of the interviewing process, we've already decided you're a functional fit. You already know that you have the skills to do the job. We're spending most of the rest of the time, at least 75% of our time is spent working out whether you'll be a cultural fit for our organization. And that is something that's really a matter of, are you the right person for the organization, not can you do the job?
Great. Grace, do you guys have specifics on your interview process that would help the audience?
Yeah, actually, I was going to add, even before you get to the interview process, I think making sure the job description that you post for any of your roles in DevRel are inviting to a whole diverse audience of folks. So the rockstar thing caught me because that's one of the things I always eliminate from our job descriptions, because women in particular often don't relate to that, and that they will automatically eliminate themselves from the process if they see things like expert or rockstar. But when you use the words have experience in or have done speaking, they'll apply. So just want to shout out for diversity and making sure your job descriptions from the very beginning are inviting to a wide range of recruits. So that's one, is where it's starting from the very beginning and setting the right job description that's inviting. For us, we always do the presentations. I think that's a really important part for our developer advocate role in particular, because it's not just about the presentation. I'm looking for, are they relating? Are they empathizing? How do they do under stress with 3 or 4 different panelists who are asking them questions during that presentation? And so really being prepared and understanding it's not just a broadcast, it's a conversation, right? And making sure that you can have those conversations on demand in person, I think is a very important skill to have. For our other roles, it really depends. We have program managers as well. We have engineers. So we craft the interview panel based on that specialized skill set that we're looking for. But to Adam's point, it's also super important for us to make sure that there's a cultural fit. So we are looking at behavior as well there.
I wonder if some people wonder, I've interviewed a lot of candidates we all have had on here. I think I give a little advice about the process, right? One, if you're at a company, and I'll even joke, if you're on my team, hey, don't listen to this advice. I want you to be on our team forever, but you probably should listen to it. Know your market value out there, right? And make sure you're aligned to that. I sometimes meet people that are just have no idea how amazing they are and how incredibly well they would be treated at any other different company. And you start talking to them and they just have no idea. Or I find some people that it's completely out of bounds. They just they come in, they think they're amazing, and you get talking to them through an interview process and they maybe realize, oh, I have this to learn. But I'd say, that process is valuable for that. I will say it can be very invigorating. It can be incredibly disruptive too, right? I know different times. I left Microsoft one time to go to Twitter, right? And I sometimes will get phone calls from other competitors and I'm not going and I'm not interviewing. But my wife would go, please, you're not looking. I said, no, I'm so happy. That can be disruptive. And I would say the thing on this, the advice I would give you is momentum is everything here. And this is the only bit I will talk to you is if you're looking at another role, look at a perspective. Is this going to advance that journey and dream that I've got? Am I going to build skills? But then also understand, is this a season where I want to be doing this? And then the thing that I ask candidates, I'd say, are you packing a parachute or are you trying to get a career? Because if you're packing a parachute, you need to get out, let's go find some things and let's go help you with that because you're in some environment and let's have one conversation. 2, if you're looking for a career opportunity, let's spend a longer term. And some of these conversations are 12 to 18 months conversations that I'm having with people. There are people that are come onto my team. I heard some different people from Google. I was probably over a year and a half. So just think about establishing that relationship. And I'd say decide when you want to go looking at stuff and don't feel bad about it. The only other thing I'll say is be upfront. You know, when you're talking to us and you want to talk salary, don't lie. Be open. You know, work those things like this and stand and be open and look for what you should be wanting for salary and take care of yourself. And then the last thing is, when you go back to your employer and you are looking to move on to a new role, and this is the part that's also scary because I'm over there trying to hire you. If you're talking to me and, hey, please come, and I'm trying to guide you through the process, do not feel bad. I'll tell you exactly what I tell every single employee that I end up in that moment when one of Adam or Grace or anybody is going off and trying to get them there. I say, wow, congratulations. You got to feel great. You know, they see in you what we see in you. You're awesome. How do we, you know, are you thinking about going and have that conversation? Please do not feel bad about looking after your career and your livelihood and your family and all your people by growing and taking care of yourself and investing. Don't feel bad. Don't feel, but also communicate. Really lean into it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Sorry, we are at time. We need to break to our Unconf speakers, but thank you so much to all of you. And yeah, I'll add that I talked to someone probably for a year, and we just didn't have the ability to hire in a certain geography. And then at a certain point, our business model shifted, and suddenly I was like, great, you know, I can have a distributed team. And so that long conversation turned into a fantastic member of our team. So I'm sure you all have similar experiences for that. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that everybody can take away from this. The video will be posted, and you gave such great advice. So we will continue to grow this DevRel community as it is growing as well. So thank you so much again. It's great seeing you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.